almost finished product was excellent. It was a great piece showing off what Dylan had created. It would have been an excellent resume item, but well, again, kind of getting ahead. The trouble was at first was tracking down guests.
Yeah, that's right.
The actual studio experience when we did get to RETN. Working with it was Jim.
Jim Onger.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I thought Jim was pretty open to the idea of us being there, and we didn't take it overly serious. And he had one studio assistant
who was there for 2 of the episodes.
And she did a great job framing. She was actually the producer of a really good documentary that she gave me a copy of. Don't ask me the title.
I won't. I would ask you though if you run into her again before you leave, can you get her name and contact info, because we could probably try to reconnect with her at some point if you're back up here and try to do another TV stint.
Sure. Yeah. I still have a copy of the DVD, and her name is, as executive producer, is on there. Really good about the peak oil. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, the studio experience was fun. There are a lot of lighthearted moments, like the old whiteboard writing information and hurling it. Maybe Nate can kind of tell that story, but
yeah. Pretty much what happened with that was we'd had the techie, I call her, in the studio, and she'd written something because we had just done the dance sequence that you see in Losing Control, and we had done the dance sequence, and I had gone and hyperextended my knee, so I was in a great deal of pain and stuff, and she wrote on the whiteboard, Nate is the Lord of the Dance. Smiley face. So I had said, give me that, and she went, no, and erased it as I walked off camera to go grab it, so all you're hearing is the audio of me yelling, give me that. Which, now that I think about it, sounded horribly wrong.
It works so well.
And Sarah Miller decided, because she was the guest, that she was going to try to hijack the show at that point. And then I went back on with the whiteboard, rewrote the stuff, held it up for people to see. And then I believe it was, she did zoom in so we could see what I was holding up. And then on the cut out to the wider shot, I went and threw the whiteboard off the screen at her.
Well, not at her, but in her general direction.
Right, that's true. She was standing behind a camera, and I chucked it over to the side where she had just been standing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was close enough. So,
yeah.
She got the message.
Yeah. In the wrong way.
So yeah, no. There were a lot of lighthearted moments. We brought Jim on to interview him. He was very nervous, did not want to appear on the screen, apparently.
He was like, what the hell are you guys doing? Who's directing this? I'm like, relax.
Being in there directing. And as I should, and of course, RETN does maybe 1, 2, I don't think they're doing any now, but from time to time they do 1 or 2 stuff in the studio, so it's not really a whole lot, and he winds up directing them, versus VCAM that has a lot of stuff in the studio and has a number of directors.
It dominates it, so really if we were going to go back, we would have to go back to probably
VCAM.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah, the studio experience was great. I thought we had a lot of really good material and some that could definitely be tossed. But
and I did most of that in editing.
yeah, exactly. But in the end, we weren't able to air any of the 6 episodes.
And here's why. We got called into, well, I'll start with you. You got called into a meeting with who? And go from there.
I think the initial meeting may have been with Barry.
Snyder, yeah.
And he was just, he was inquiring as to what exactly we were doing with the show and how it came to pass that I was kind of filling Alan's role and who made that decision. I kind of explained the basic details that Alan kind of passed the baton. And, even though the concept of the show was well known to everyone who had paid attention to the previous season, season 1, I still had to kind of explain what was going on there.
Which is odd because that guy signed off on it in the first place.
And explain what was going on in season 2. And the meeting ended, and I remember I talked to Nate that day, and I said I was being rather vague because I didn't want to sound too concerned, but I remember saying, Nate, we may have a problem. And I didn't, and you were like, well, you were asking, well, what exactly was said? And I said, maybe you should wait till you talk to someone.
Right. Well, you had said go find Barry post haste, and I had said to you, what exactly was said, and you said, well, I can't really get into specifics, but it's about Bird to College Presents. And I said, what did you say? Because I need to know going into that. And you said, well, here's a small portion of what I said. Try and give me general terms. And I said, don't assume that these guys are on your side because I'm connected to the show. They're going to screw us over. And sure enough, but that's getting into the story once again. So at that point, I think I talked to you, Casey, and you and I are going to be editing the thing. And we'd set up a few edit times and whatnot. So we were continuing to go ahead with that stuff while we were waiting because Barry was very unresponsive for a week and a half. And then he finally got around to meeting with me. And he had asked me similar questions to, I guess, what he had said to you. And I had said pretty much the same thing that I assumed that you had said. And I said, I cleared it with him. I cleared it with Art and stuff beforehand, so there shouldn't have been a problem. And they said, well, we need you to suspend activity on it. I said, well, we don't have anything else planned right now. We're editing what we have. And they said, well, we need you to suspend all activity. I said, well, it doesn't make any sense for me to stop editing stuff because this stuff can potentially get wrapped up. Well, you guys figure out whatever the issue is that's inside your heads because we don't have an issue with it.
And I never really found
And then that was when you and I had to go into a meeting.
I think there was a point prior to the meeting that you and I went to collectively where some of the footage was requested to be reviewed. I think we later found out that no one ever watched the footage that we provided. We provided a disc, I believe it was of Dylan, maybe or kind of a rough cut of Dylan's episode, and we found out later that no one ever watched it.
Well, that was more...
Even though it was only after all, or as a rough cut, what would you estimate? 40 minutes, no one ended up watching it. So...
well, that was at the point when they were hadn't fully been canceled. They were more or less saying that they wanted a staff member, film faculty person to look at stuff, and basically probably also hinting at, although the school never really said that they have a rule about having to have a staff member or film faculty person being the producer as well.
Well, no, they did later say that, but that's the story. So at that point, they had at least established that they felt that we needed oversight because we were not capable of doing this ourselves, which is number one, insulting to begin with, but number two, uh, it was also a bullshit reason to get us in to can us, which I believe wholeheartedly that this was a setup of sorts, and I'm saying that purely on a speculative manner. I have no way that I can prove that, but circumstances would be hard pressed to prove otherwise. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I would say that the fear, it was an irrational fear that something was going to be said on the program that was going to negatively impact the college.
Right.
When in reality, and we continue to make this point over and over again, including in the second meeting, that if you watch the footage, you will not see anything that shines or points a negative light on the school. It does not exist. It's not in the footage, not in the rough footage, certainly not in the edited footage. There's nothing there, but no one was willing to go to that step and actually watch what we had filmed.
Right.
It was assuming that we had said something inflammatory because I think it was directed at us as students in particular. The assumption was that something inflammatory would be said or had been said, with zero proof.
Well, it was also made because at the time, somebody from my support system outside the school had just threatened the school with legal action about violating my civil rights. So they just furthered that argument by continuing to do it via canceling the show unjustly and without cause and without proper investigation into what they were making accusations about. But that said, the accusations that were made, again, as Mike just said, were false. I myself recognize that I have my legal issues with the school, but I also recognize the manner to be professional on that show and not say anything that slammed the school in any way, shape, or form. So I would carefully dance around the areas where I felt like I wanted to haul off and say something.
Yeah, in fact, I remember we never had a script, but we had a list of some questions to ask, and we intentionally avoided any questions that maybe appeared on the question sheet before the show, and eliminated kind of the ones that may have been in a gray area related to the school. So we were really careful. We did a better editing job of our own material than anyone on the staff could have. But again, there was this irrational fear that something would be said or had been said. But no one bothered to follow through and actually look at what we had produced.
That's right.
So there was no facts. Again, irrational fear, not irrational fear.
Right.
Exactly. So bottom line is that there's this irrational fear that something had been said or would be said, when in reality there was nothing slanderous at all.
And since slander is the wrong term entirely, it's
well,
nothing
no verbal attacks at all.
So there's nothing libelous.
Nothing libelous.
The legal dictionary.
Yeah, nothing libelous on there. And if they looked at that, they would have realized there was nothing libelous.
Exactly. And in the end, I think the worst part about the episode, which the whole Burlington College Presents episode, not an individual episode, the whole episode involving us and Burlington College Presents, is that it was such a great forum with a lot of potential, again, to benefit the school and the students.
And it could have been used as promotional material for the school besides, if they had taken the time to watch the damn show instead of deciding to insensibly argue that they were right